Okay, I think we're here. Both of us, Larry.
Hello, Ida. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you. How are you this morning?
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us here at Catapult Cloud. You were with us at Catapult Future Fest the first year in 2017. And I have so many beautiful pictures of you sitting in that sauna that we had there and giving your little fireside chat.
You're so nice.
Yeah. So I'm really grateful for that. You are back and taking time of your busy schedule. You are one of the persons in the world that knows probably the most of and has direct experience also with pandemics. You are the founder and the CEO of Pan Defense, a philanthropist, and you were part of the World Health Organization and helping them successfully to eradicate smallpox back in the 70s. I remember when you were at Catapult, you said something that really sat with me, and I think very often I go back to that sentence. And what you said were, I'm not sure if this is the correct wording, but it was in this direction. And it talks to also the tagline for this year, Catapult Future Fest, the future is one. And what you said was that we're all made of the same material, we're all made of blood, and we can all get sick and die. And in February, when we started to I think you even refer, it was announced a pandemic, the COVID-19. I was thinking, okay, what does Larry say? So I went to, I went into your Facebook page, and there was an interview for, I think, February 28th. And what you said was with great seriousness, and this is going to be a bumpy ride. And I felt that you were saying that to the whole world, this is going to be a bumpy ride for us. That's 3 months ago. Did you understood what went through your mind? Did you see what was happening?
Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be back. I feel like this is my adopted community at Catapult, and I send love to everybody that I met when I was there before, or I'm meeting now for the first time. Yes, in a way, and there's a group of us who have been called Cassandras. It didn't end so well for Cassandra, so that's not something that I aspire to be, but it wasn't just me. I think every epidemiologist who has studied infectious diseases, especially those who have studied emerging new novel diseases like this one, has been saying for 30 years, every time we have an opportunity, we've been saying it's not a question of if, it's only a question of when.
Yeah.
And this coronavirus was as logical a virus to jump from an animal to a human as any of the other 30 or 35 animal viruses that have jumped from animals to humans in the last 30 years, and continue to jump at a rate of 2 to 3 per year. And many of them, if I say all the names like Ebola and Zika and Marburg and Lassa fever and West Nile and swine flu and bird flu, it's like a catechism. But it's going to continue. This pandemic is but one in a string. It is a different situation than it was in 1918, of course, in the great influenza, because we have such different transportation, faster transportation, better science. But it is the same principle that viruses that live in animals will jump to humans when humans move into the territory occupied by animals, or when we eat more meat, or particularly when we eat exotic and wild animals. But as humanity has expanded to 8 billion people and cut down rainforests and cut down forests and plowed them under the normal habitat of bats and monkeys and chimpanzees has been taken over by human beings. So we share everything now, including viruses. Therefore, this is not unexpected. The one thing that has been that was unexpected to me was I've always believed that in the end, science would be the guiding light to get us out of a pandemic like this. I didn't anticipate that governments would be as incompetent, politically charged. I certainly didn't anticipate at this moment in time when the centrifugal forces of nationalism are tearing us apart as a world. And whether you like the nationalistic movement or you don't, the virus doesn't care how you feel about it or I feel about it. This is a good time to be a virus, and it's a bad time to live in the age of pandemics.
Do you see, because we have been talking actually in several conversations throughout the day, we're getting too close to nature. We are exploiting ourselves. We are disconnected. We are maybe even using technology and science not for the benefit of ourselves, and we are getting polarized and kind of not being kind to ourselves in a sense, and maybe kind as it should be. Do you see that do you see any positive in that sense with this pandemic? Because we are now, we are baking bread, a lot of us back home. We are sitting with ourselves. We are, those of us who actually are in that privileged situation where we have homes and we have good homes, and we actually may use this time for some reflection. Do you see, because this is about a culture shift, and this is about understanding that we shouldn't go so close into nature, and maybe we shouldn't eat that much meat and so forth. Do you see this?
Well, I think we can reflect on best practices for all those things, but it's also a time to make that love and make it into action. Tell everybody, give money to your local food bank. Because so many of us cannot binge and hoard. If you have a Zoom and if you have the ability to have videos like this and you can stay at home, it means you have a home. The homeless community is the one that is hit the hardest by a pandemic like this. And that's even in the West. When you move now to Syrian refugees, or you look at the slums in Kibera in Kenya, or you look at in Mumbai right now, this incredible congregation of 1 square mile, the densest occupied 1 square mile in the world. And you'll see it's inevitable that what happened in Manhattan, in northern Italy, in Wuhan, they will happen wherever there's densely occupied human territory. The virus will go wherever there is a highest density of susceptibles. And since we're all susceptible, there's not a single person alive except perhaps the 80,000 that have had the disease and seroconverted. Every day that number goes up. Other than those people, whether you're a king or a queen or a prime minister or you're a CEO or you're homeless, you are equally susceptible to this virus. And throughout history, it has been the case. When I taught public health at the University of Michigan as a professor, my favorite slide was a slide that showed the 30 kings and queens and emperors throughout history, the Aztec world, Catherine the Great, how many English kings and queens who died from smallpox. I didn't show that because I wanted to show that I was against royalty, or it wasn't a political statement. It was a statement as you began this conversation by saying, in the end, whether we are 98 or 99 or 99.4% the same genome, we are all equally susceptible to a novel virus, to a new virus, for which none of us in our ontology, our historical evolution, have ever faced that virus, and we have no inherent immunity. So we really, truly are all in this together. That is not some woo-woo hippie age of Aquarius. We are all in this together. We are literally, biologically, politically, and emotionally all in this together, and we damn well better behave like it.
Exactly. Yeah. And are we doing enough? You were tapping into, like, the stupidity of governments and many different solutions to this. If it's isolation and different processes that different countries and cities has been taking to take care of their citizens, some better than others. Are we doing enough, you think?
No. I mean, my country, I know you have an expression in Europe that we don't use very much in the United States. We say that somebody has committed an own goal, like you've scored in your own net. I think we sort of say you bit off your nose to spite your face, or something like that. Our president just today has threatened to withdraw from the World Health Organization. Now, I have to tell you, we all have this meme in our mind that we will do what's necessary until there is a vaccine. We have this time frame in our mind, 12 to 18 months before we'll have a vaccine. We can talk about those specifics. They're all a little aspirational. But when you do get a vaccine, you do not get rainbows and unicorns. When you get a vaccine, what you get is a vaccination program, campaign, like smallpox eradication, like polio eradication, which is the most recent example of a vaccination campaign that had to go to 220 countries, the farthest reach of each of those countries, to the poorest and most vulnerable corners of those 220 countries. And you're telling me that the United States will withdraw from the agency that would do that, the World Health Organization? Why are we not, instead of making threats like that, why are we not gathering with all countries and all people of goodwill, and today planning, what will we do when we do have a vaccine? How will we distribute it equitably and fairly? How can we think about the poorest and most vulnerable to be sure that the vaccination reaches the people who need it the most? How are we making these programs that will reach every country in Africa? Are we going to have the vaccine manufactured in multiple places? How will we distribute it? What will we do to get the jeeps to take the vaccine to the places we need to go, the boats in places like Bangladesh and Myanmar? How are we thinking about a program like that? Why are we not calling in the people from the polio eradication program and starting now to think about how a vaccination program like that will be carried out? Because having the vaccine, and I'm optimistic that we'll have a vaccine, having the vaccine won't do any good if 50% of the population can't be reached. We haven't produced enough vaccine. We haven't thought about where it's going to go. If we vaccinate half of the population and leave half of the population unvaccinated, this virus will ping pong back and forth between countries that have outbreaks, back to places that thought they had vaccinated everybody, but there will be a crevice, there will be a leftover spot. The virus will jump back to it. We need to think now about how we will work together. This virus will force us to again re-examine the value of global governance, global agencies, the primacy of the United Nations, and how, those councils where we can finally work together to adjudicate these complicated issues. So on the one hand, I'm hopeful that the fear that has been engendered by the virus will produce the kind of global thinking that led to the creation of the United Nations and WHO and the World Bank after the Second World War. On the other hand, I am fearful that in fact the opposite will happen, and that in our selfishness we will become more divisive, and that organizational plan of the governance of the UN and its agencies that's kept the world together for 70 years will suffer a further hit.
So what you're saying, we need a global plan, and we need kind of a demand or understanding for that to happen, or that organization or the organization or at least supporting those organizations that can roll out that plan and not failing it in the sense. But we have been talking earlier also about this maybe this is coming from the bottom up, like conferences like this or conversations like this. Is it like creating that movement? What can I do? What can the regular man and woman in the street do to be that glue, or create that connection that we can come with? I would say maybe it's not you for me to say, but maybe a demand of that such a plan.
Well, I think that this is a time to be active politically, and to select your leaders who understand that global issues can only be solved at a global level. You cannot solve the issues of climate change or nuclear proliferation or pandemic, or many of the things that that modernity has bequeathed us. They cannot be solved at a national level. Albert Einstein famously said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level it has been created. It must be solved by going to a higher level of political organization or a higher level of consciousness. And so select your leaders who understand this and who have a commitment. And not to globalization. I think that's become a buzzword that has so many different meanings for different people. But how about community? How about global community? We need to have an understanding that global solidarity, global community, and you said earlier, love is what will bring that together.
And we have seen a lot of love, because we were talking yesterday. It's all these people who are on the front line. What are they driven by? And they are driven by, I guess, that responsibility, and that responsibility come from a place of love, I think there was a gratitude practice I was talking about with Tristan Harris earlier today as well, and having that gratitude practice, and from that place also feel that we're all connected in a sense, and then work with that community and create these movements. But what you're saying also, is it a time for activism, so to say?
Sure. I mean, we have seen not just love in an abstract sense, but we've seen real heroism. I think 20% of the physicians in northern Italy contracted this virus. You think in every country, who is rushing in to take care of a patient with COVID? It's a nurse, it's a home health care worker, it's a social worker, it's a volunteer. In many parts of the world, these same millennials that are being blamed for being aloof or solipsistic, they are actually the ones who are driving the cars to bring the food to people, and they're volunteering. I was astounded that tens of thousands of young people all over the world have volunteered deliberately infected with the virus. Have volunteered to be deliberately infected with the virus, so that on them new vaccines and new antivirals can be tested. This is a level of love, caring. It's just wonderful. It plays against the whole image of this millennial generation of not being interested in others. This is a great act of kindness and love. So I'm optimistic that this is a time for community, and from that, yes, activism. We all know what we need to have in the world. We know what we need out of our leaders. We need to have a different kind of leader than the world is producing right now, country after country after country.
I will say that we've seen some, and this being, we've seen some female leaders. We've seen some great transparency and clarity, and especially also, I'm so lucky that I live in Norway, but New Zealand and Finland, as well, and that's those role models of also quite young leaders. And coming from that millennial generation that has had the ability to be really both vulnerable, clear, transparent in their communication, and to see that expression as opposed to other political expressions is making me optimistic, at least.
I was on a call with the Director General of the World Health Organization last week, and someone asked him the question, what are the characteristics of the countries that are doing the best? Not exactly who are the winners and the losers, but who's really doing well against COVID and who is not. He said, well, there's three characteristics that just stand out mathematically. One is that they come from an island republic. That's self-evidently easier to defend your country against a pandemic if you have an island. The other are countries that have recently had a disease like this. So, of course, South Korea had both SARS and especially MERS.
Yeah.
And Thailand had SARS and more recently MERS. And he said, in addition to that, the single most important characteristic that the countries that have done well all seems to share is a female leader, a woman.
Yeah. So maybe it's the time for that feminine or that vulnerability, the softness and strongness in the same in the leadership. Then maybe those are the leader we should look to and vote for going further while we are gathering our community and gather with them. Yeah, I think what we're going to do, Larry, is to jump out of the stage here and then go out to the session and open up for a Q&A where we can bring more people also on the screen with us.
Do you want me to jump, or will you take me with you?
I'll take you with take you with me.
All right.
Okay. In spirit.